Hi, welcome to Tuesday Talks. My name is Judy Zorn, and I am thrilled to welcome Charlie MacInnis today as my guest on Tuesday Talks. And we will talk a little bit about where we are in just a moment, because as you can tell, we're in a unique setting today for our Tuesday Talk. But before we get into that, Charlie, I want to personally thank you for serving in the Army.
Oh, well,
and
thank you.
I know that you spent some time in Vietnam, and I want to thank you for your service for the country.
I did it because I was going to be drafted, so I went in and did my job, and I'm happy that I did.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you. I know that you relocated to Petoskey in about 2002, something around
Harbor Springs.
Harbor Springs, okay, thank you. And I know your career was in public relations and marketing. And when you relocated up here to Northern Michigan, you started teaching at the college.
I worked as a public relations director and a marketing person, and I did teach a couple classes, but mostly I did public relations, marketing, market research, that sort of thing.
Right, yeah, it's a great place to be, and it's grown so much in all of these years, hasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I know now you currently are the host of the Friday lunch and lecture.
The college, right.
And I'm sure you do such interesting programs there.
Well, I've done it for more than 17 years and hadn't missed a program until COVID-19 came along, so we had to cancel half of the season, but I still have a roster of folks ready to go that I hope to restart in the fall.
Sure. And we are sitting in a hangar, as it's pretty obvious, you can see, with the plane behind me, which happens to be Charlie's plane. So
Right.
Tell us a little bit about you, Charlie MacInnis, the pilot.
Well, when I was going to go into the Army, I enlisted rationally to be a helicopter pilot. That seemed like the only rational thing to do.
Sure.
But one eye was farsighted, so I ended up in the Signal Corps. But I rode in helicopters in Vietnam, never in combat, but with a colonel and doing various things. But when I got out of the Army, I decided I do want to learn how to fly. So my early 20s, when I was making about $4 an hour, I was renting an airplane at $14 an hour and an instructor with an additional $4, and learned how to fly. It has been my mental health outlet since then. Every day that I'm having a tough day, if I know that tomorrow I'm going to go flying, it lifts my spirits. And I can tell you, after almost 2,700 hours of flying and more than 2,700 landings and takeoffs, every one of them is as fun as the first one. I'm now teaching 3 people how to fly: my 6-year-old granddaughter, my 11-year-old grandson, and a young lady at age 13 who went with me yesterday up to Bob Lowe Island, and she took off, did most of the flight, and I landed the plane. But if flying wasn't exciting enough, taking others up and saying, "It's your airplane," and then sitting here like this and having a 13-year-old fly at
Fly you around.
130 miles an hour, but making sure that she is safe and successful is really rewarding.
That is incredible, and I look forward to my first flight.
Okay.
With you anytime, Charlie. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Okay, we are back in a new location, as you can see. It was getting a little bit noisy out there with airplanes coming and going, and after all, we were in a hangar, right, Charlie? So
Correct.
Here we are in the conference room to complete our chat with Charlie, and I think now it's time to focus a little bit on the orchestra. And I know you said that you relocated up here to Harbor Springs in 2002, and we know that the orchestra was formed in right about that same time, 2001, 2002. So you've been a musician with the orchestra for a long time, but even more than that, I know that you had some board responsibilities. So tell us a little bit about how you got active on the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra Board.
Well, I'd been in the orchestra a few years, and the orchestra's bylaws, which I think are very well done, specify that 2 of the board members are elected from the musicians, one from the winds and one from the strings. So the winds at one point elected me. I did not raise my hand, but they
Sure,
elected
yeah.
me to be the board,
Right.
and I believed then that that would be like the worst thing in the world for me. I have this belief that there's a difference between sex and a panel discussion on sex, and there's a difference between playing the clarinet
Thank you, Charlie.
and having a board meeting. I love the clarinet. But I also have pretty significant educational training in accounting, and so as a member of the board, I immediately went to the financials, and at that particular time, not surprisingly, that orchestra, like many, was having really serious financial problems, and I would do a cash flow study, and so pretty soon I became the treasurer, and then pretty soon I became the bookkeeper and wrote the paychecks for the musicians and hired an accountant to teach me how to do QuickBooks. So I then was in this interesting mode of having a music folder. On one side was Beethoven and Mozart, and the other side was tax forms. And the two don't really
Right,
blend together
right.
tremendously well. And at some point I said, I can't do this. It was just too much. It drained all the fun out. But subsequent to that, the orchestra has a treasurer who is very good at what he does. Fundraising is very well done under your stewardship. And I'm back playing second clarinet and happy as a clam. So,
Well, because I was going to say, you know, in the past 20 years, the orchestra is just had such a wonderful foundation of so many very good and talented people that have been really watching over not only the orchestra members and what's being performed, but as you well know, the kind of the backside of,
Right.
of running the orchestra or any business really. And so we are really in good shape now, albeit, you know, we're a nonprofit, of course, and always need donations and money to do our programming, but we're on some solid footing and solid foundations. So tell me a little bit about the clarinet, and as we can see here, you brought some clarinets for us to take a look at, and I know you're going to tell us about that in a moment, but how old were you when you started playing the clarinet?
I was in 5th grade, and I played most of my life, and I have indicated that when I die, I want on my tombstone an inscription that said, in about 2 years, he would have mastered the clarinet. 2 more years. I started up with a metal clarinet, played in the high school band starting in 8th grade when the director said if I would play the alto clarinet, I could be in the high school band. I was already a young kid because I was born late in the year, so I was one of the younger ones in my class, and I was in the high school band with kids who were much taller. But it was a wonderful high school band up in Sault Ste. Marie, and I eventually became first chair clarinet. Thanks to a clarinet my father bought me. My father didn't have much money, but he bought me a wonderful clarinet, and that was really a help, and became first chair, but also was elected to be the, they called the president of the band, which is a bunch of
Right.
kids, you know, as a leadership group, but I directed the band at pep assemblies and basketball games. And what I learned was you have to hold on to the baton or you're gonna throw your baton at a flute player. But
They don't like that.
well, they don't prefer it, and so, but it was great fun. I played in the marching band at CMU in college, but I moved on to other things. I was in the Army. I auditioned for the 25th Division Band and as a fluke and got in, but my job was actually cushier than the band, and so I decided I'll just stay as a battalion clerk. But so I played in every city band in my life. I decided when I retired in 2002 that maybe I should learn how to play this thing. And I was trying to play the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, and I realized that I had hit a roadblock and couldn't do it on my own. So I hired an instructor from Harbor Springs, a wonderful man. I was his only student who had his own driver's license. But every Wednesday night for 5 years, I went to Doug Beecham's house and got a little better on the Mozart. And I would bring my orchestra music to him saying, I don't understand this. And Doug, who'd been in the Air Force Band and played in many other groups, was really phenomenal. And
and helped me. And what I learned, what we all learn, is that the learning process continues. That practicing on your own helps you get good at mistakes. You just do the mistake more thoroughly, but you don't get better. And having a teacher that can analyze your work is great. So that was a big growth experience. And so here I am. I'm still doing that.
You know, it is so amazing, and maybe it isn't, Charlie, but so many people that you talk to, they've started music in elementary school. They started in that 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, or middle
Right.
school music programs, and it is something that has stuck with them in some fashion for most of their life. And you just told us you had such an extensive band background and playing in clarinet.
Right.
Sure, you know, you would, but it just gave you such a foundation in your music skills, and for you to transition to orchestra, yeah, there probably was a little bit of a transition there, but you play the notes that are on the page, and like you said, you took lessons and just keep getting better and better at what you're doing, and we're ever so grateful that you are with us and with the orchestra. So now, Charlie, tell us a little bit. You've got 4 different clarinets here. This looks like a saxophone to me. I'm sorry, you know. And then you have you know, a couple different sizes there. What would be the clarinet that you would play most frequently in the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra?
Well, for decades, I played the B-flat clarinet, which is in every band. Bands play the B-flat clarinet. But the people who invented and perfected the clarinet developed them in multiple lengths for all sorts of reasons that I don't know. But if you're going to play in an orchestra, you start out with the B-flat, but if you're going to play quite a few pieces, you're going to require an A clarinet, which is just a little bit longer and allows you to not have to deal with quite so many sharps and flats. If you're going to play out of a church hymnal, or if you're going to play some of the French music, you're going to require a C clarinet, which is much shorter. It's a happy little clarinet. It's the one that really gives you kind of a nice little bright tone, but it's different. And when you move from one to the other, your muscles have to think about where I'm supposed to be.
I bet.
But, and sometimes you might play all 3 in a given concert. You have to keep grabbing clarinets. And in fact, the real secret to this clarinet is I have the letter A written on the back, because I remember the look on the conductor's face when I began playing the B flat, because I had reached it instead of the A, and for some reason it didn't work. So, so I have with some whiteout, I typed put an A in there. The C is easy to figure out because it's just a little guy, but they're just different keys, and they perform different parts. And you know, you can't go wrong buying a clarinet. It's not that terribly expensive, and it's just too much fun, because I was playing some French music, Bizet or something, required a C, and I went out and just bought a C clarinet, and it was fun.
Okay, so composers will compose with a different clarinet in mind,
Right.
an A flat or a C, and this, of course, is on the bass clarinet.
Right, and then if you get tired of being up in the soprano range and you really want to have some fun, you acquire one of these guys, and this I think is my 5th bass clarinet, because I went through every type of bass clarinet, the plastic one, until I found this buffet. You know, I would learn on one, I would get better, and it would reach a plateau. If you spend enough time with an instrument, you begin to recognize its strengths and weaknesses. And there are good Yamaha plastic clarinets that are great for high school bands. They're designed to be thrown on a bus, and the case will sustain all of that. But at some point, if you really want to improve your tone and get the richness of the bass, you need to have one of these fine buffets. And I have mostly buffets. I have a couple of Italian clarinets. But
Hold that up for us so we
bet.
can see
This guy right
really
here.
the whole thing.
And you know, I've been
looks
playing in a
like.
clarinet quintet this summer. They've got 4 clarinets, or quintet, and I play the bass clarinet with this group. And you know, the bass clarinet, it's like a tuba or a baritone. It provides that foundation for everything else. And what I really like about it is fewer notes. You mostly play rhythm and just play an E natural or an E flat at the bottom. And You're just playing one note, and people say, "Oh, that sounds so great." And I'm thinking, I'm only playing one note. I had to play 1,000 notes on this thing, and you say, "Well, that was okay." One note on that guy, and everybody's like, "That is really great."
It has such a mellow sound to
Oh,
it,
it's
doesn't it?
so rich, so
So
dense,
beautiful.
and it's just, it has a personality.
Now, I noticed, Charlie, you've got one mouthpiece,
Right.
and so obviously they just fit on.
Well, I left the one off the bass clarinet. It's a big
a
fat
bigger-
mouthpiece.
Sure.
But I just use one mouthpiece and I move it from horn to horn so that the reed's always wet and ready to go. And, I mean, I could play different reeds, but if I'm playing one clarinet and the other one's sitting over here, while I'm playing, I'm wondering how dry that other reed's becoming and whether it'll play when I reach for that horn. So, one of the things you do when you mark up your music is tell yourself with some notes here when to get ready to grab the other clarinet. You think about this, just the logistics of how I'm gonna get that other horn going. So,
Part of your practicing, isn't it?
yeah. In fact, I was sitting next to a fabulous clarinetist who switched horns just because it put the notes in a little bit different location on the instrument. So he was doing it just for some tactical reasons because it helped him. You couldn't tell the difference, but for him it was just a little ease of playing.
So you sit a little further back when
Mhm.
you're on stage in the orchestra, and typically there might be two or maybe three of you in Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. We
Mhm.
always don't have tremendous depth in
Right.
all of our instruments, but typically there might be two or three of you
Right.
in the clarinet section. And then you oftentimes are sitting next to the oboe or
Yep, the
flute.
oboe is in front and to the left.
Mhm.
The flutes are right in front, where the clarinets, and then the bassoons. And there are 8 of us together, and we're close together because we interact with each other in the music.
I was just gonna ask you that.
Yeah.
How important is that?
It's vital. And I will tell you, with the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, we all regard each other as friends, and we work together. The first oboe is phenomenal. She's a
Yes.
music teacher.
Lynn,
She
yeah.
continues to offer her advice. I mean, I keep thinking, I get to get advice from music teachers when I come to this orchestra. They're willing to provide it, and I love having it. And so the 8 of us work together as a group because we are an ensemble that exists within the orchestra. When you play Beethoven's Ninth, for example, which we were going to play, I downloaded the music long before it was going to be distributed because I wanted to learn the part.
Sure.
But Beethoven's Ninth is a massive piece of music. It turns out the hard part, there's 2 hard parts. One is playing the notes. The harder part is knowing when to play the notes.
Ah,
And sometimes just looking at the music isn't enough. So I downloaded the flute part and the oboe part and the violin part to figure out where I was going to be in all this. And that is, I mean, this is an ensemble, and I'm in the back, and I'm happy in the back, but I'm part of a group, and this group has to work precisely together.
right. It's more than just counting your notes and counting the rests and knowing when to come in. It's making the music, and that's the part that you do as an ensemble together. And the wind section plays throughout so many of the pieces.
Right.
And I mean, obviously the strings play a lot, but the wind section adds such a foundation and plays a lot throughout most of the pieces in an
Right.
orchestral piece.
I was preparing for the Mozart Requiem. I watched it on a YouTube video, look at the music, but one thing I didn't know was that I had a solo. And it was the 5th beat into the Mozart Requiem, and everybody's heard it, everybody knows it, they're gonna know if I
Yeah.
screw it up. And I was screwing it up in rehearsal, so I was looking at it, and I had discovered during a rehearsal that, oh, it's just me playing, it's not the other clarinet, it's just me. So I sent a note to a wonderful clarinetist over in Traverse City, G. Marie Riccobono, and I said, G. Marie, can you give me advice on this B natural that I've got to play on beat 5? I got a page of advice
Really?
because Jean Marie is wonderful, and I practiced it, listened to it, recorded it, listened to it, recorded it, listened to it, screwed up twice in rehearsal, but I got it right during the performance, and I was a happy person.
And there was a page worth of tips and teaching to get you to do
For
that
one
one
note.
note.
That is what it takes
That
to
is-
play in an orchestra.
That is what it takes. And you hear it all together, and we sit in the audience, and it sounds wonderful. And all of you are so dedicated and working so hard to make it happen and make the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra sound the way it does.
That's right.
Yeah, we've had a lot of changes through the 20 years, haven't we? And a lot of wonderful people, although we have many musicians, a good handful of musicians that have been with us for a very long time.
Paul Sonner being one, obviously, and a number of others who have been just terrific.
Right. John Van Patten.
John Van Patten.
Some string players and other brass players, and yeah, so it's wonderful. And well, my goodness, here we are in COVID, Charlie, and wondering where we're going to be next season.
Right.
So we'll just have to keep vigilant and watch and wait and
Each
see.
day I pull out the Mozart clarinet concerto and play it so that I'm playing something. And I've got the music on a YouTube, so I pretend that I'm with a bunch of people,
Right.
my new friends from who knows where.
Right.
But I missed my friends from the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra.
You do miss performing, don't you?
I miss practicing. Performing is a little stressful. I go through some mood swings here. When I first get the music, I say to myself, are they trying to get rid of me? I can't possibly play this. And then I analyze it and I say, okay, I can play these notes, then I can play these notes, then I can play these notes. No, I can play the whole thing. Then we have a rehearsal. I think, well, this is not too terrible. This is good. And the second rehearsal comes along. Dress rehearsal comes along. I'm a little anxious. The performance, I'm thinking, please don't screw up. Got a page of notes to play, page of instructions to play one note. Then when it's over, sometimes I go home and I will play it again.
Interesting.
That night, I'll go home. I said, I just love that. I just got to play it one more time.
One more time. Because I did it the way I wanted to do it.
Well,
the way I practiced.
The way I was supposed to do it. It's not the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to play it perfectly.
Well, yeah, I know. I hear you. I know.
Right.
Charlie, this has been wonderful, and we're so thrilled to have you in the orchestra and have you living here among us, and I know that you are a wonderful ambassador for the orchestra. So not only have you been on the other side of the table, so to speak, with working with the orchestra and administration and on the board, and you've been and still are a musician in the orchestra, and I know because of both of those roles, and particularly because of you as a musician, you are also a wonderful ambassador.
Thank you.
For the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, and we play an important role, as does music. As we wind this down and close today, tell me a little bit about what does music mean to you?
When I was in high school, my friends were listening to the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the music store buying albums. I made my own sound system at home. And I bought this album because it had an unusual cover. Well, it was Shostakovich.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is odd music. And I listened to it over and over again. I listened to Saint-Saëns Symphony No. 3, the Organ Symphony, when I was in high school. And this is not a normal approach. I mean, Benny Goodman is fine because I'm a clarinet player.
Yes.
But then Shostakovich, Saint-Saëns, Beethoven. When I was in third grade, a teacher at Lincoln School was teaching us music, and she would take this metal device that had 5 pieces of chalk, and she would draw a stanza, a thing, and she would put some music.
Staff line.
Then at 1 o'clock, she would turn the radio on, and the local radio station would play the music that she was teaching up in Sault Ste. Marie. And she would play this, and the radio station would play Chopin. And I'm in this warm classroom in third grade hearing Chopin. And today, if you turn the radio on and it was Chopin playing the Polonaise or who knows, I would think I was back in third grade. When I'm playing my clarinet, I'm back in 6th grade with that metal clarinet playing. Or I'm in 8th grade, a tall flute player helping me get my bow tie on, or my tie, because she knew how to tie it and I didn't. So this keeps me young and frustrated, because I'll never be perfect, but I am going to keep trying. And I don't know what it is about classical music, but it resonates with me just like it does with so many other people.
So many people.
When I die, I've got 2 requests, if you'll just make a note of that.
Okay.
When they come in at my funeral and I'm lying there next to my clarinet, I want them to play the second movement of the Mozart clarinet concerto, the slow part. And then after they'd said what a strange dude this was, and we sort of miss him, and the ceremony's over, and they said a bunch of stuff, I want them to play Benny Goodman playing Sing, Sing, Sing. So if you just make a note of that, the clarinet concerto and Sing, 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 and that wraps up my whole musical life.
And I think that's a wrap for us here today. It's interesting that sometimes we call ourselves classical musicians, don't we? But
Right.
we love all types of music. Everybody that I talk to, whether it is the Beatles or John Denver or Benny Goodman or whatever it is,
Right.
and music plays such an important role in I think most people's lives in some fashion or another. It lifts us up, it helps us when we're sad, it celebrates with us when we're excited. And so we are thrilled to be part of the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra, to be the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra here in this part of our community in northern Michigan. And it's because of musicians like you, Charlie, that we are who we are. And I am so thankful and grateful, Charlie, that you have joined us today on Tuesday Talks. And thank you for joining us. And stay tuned. And please go on our website and take a look at our GLCO in concert, our Little Bay concerts, and of course our Tuesday Talks. All of these are recorded and are the virtual Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. And we will continue being that, certainly, for a while. And we do look forward to when the curtain rises and we can be with all of you again live when it is safe to do so. So Charlie, thank you again very much, and thank you for joining us.